I started this project with a walnut slab I had milled up a while back. There was some slight checking on the ends, but I was pretty sure I could work around that problem. Oops. Searching through my woodpile, I found this slab. It certainly was not going to become what I had originally imagined it, but God's plan is always better than ours. Even though it's broken and cracked, it still has some strong, straight grain and was thick enough for this new purpose. Once I had lopped off the checked ends, I was able to get to the heartwood with the bandsaw. Even though I'll be turning the project, I will need some square surfaces to lay out the joinery on the handle. I use the joiner to face plane and edge joint the board. And then follow up with the planer. Finally, on the table saw, I rip the square stock, which will become the shaft of the cane. Here I'm laying out the joinery for the shaft of the cane. I will be using a mortise and tenon. The tenon will be part of the shaft, so it will be the stronger direction of the wood grain. The joint will also have miters to increase the glue surface area for the joint. This is what my layout lines look like to give a bit of a preview. Now I just need to cut away everything that doesn't look like the tenon side of the joint. Here is the rough cut shaft side of the joint. Hand tool work is still an area I need to work on. I'll just clean things up with a chisel. I've been saving this end of spalted maple for a special project. I think this qualifies. It is a bit bigger than I need, so I'll cut it down to rough size. Since this will be the handle, I'll need the matching mortise joint from the shaft. Here I'm cutting out the mitered part of the joint, sneaking up on the cut. There's a little ridge at the bottom that I'll need to clean up with the chisel. At the drill press, I'll use the mortising attachment to hollow the mortise for the tenon. Now a quick test fit to ensure I'm on the right path. I'll bring the shaft of the cane over to the lathe and get it mounted up. Since the tenon is a weak point, I don't want the pressure on it to cause a split, so I'm wrapping it in electrical tape. And just a quick visual to make sure it's not bowing. I usually use a skew for making a round shaft, which is how I started. This was working well enough for both ends. But the center was a different beast. The shaft kept flexing, even while I was trying to support it with my hand. I tried switching to a spindle gouge, but still flexing while supporting it. Finally, I had to settle for a very slow method of going into tiny slices of end grain and following up with a scrape on the wing. Where it was supported better on the end, it went quite quickly. And sanding. Even with the scraping with the wing, it still needed some sanding. Spalting comes from the decaying of the wood. I'm using a process called stabilizing, which impregnates the wood with a resin. First, it is submerged into a liquid resin and vacuumed. The vacuum removes all the air trapped in the cells and voids in the wood. When the vacuum is released, it sucks the resin into the cells and the voids. Then the piece is drip dried and patted down and wrapped in tin foil. Finally, it is baked to cure the resin absorbed into the piece, making it much stronger. In retrospect, I probably should have stabilized prior to cutting the joint. The piece of wood moved a lot and the surfaces all wound up covered with the hardened resin. So I had to recut the joint and re-hollow the mortise. I covered one face with painter's tape and marked out the rough shape. Then at the bandsaw, I cut out the handle. I turned it 90 degrees and removed some of the width of the handle with the same process. Much of the rest of the shaping was done at the spindle sander. This was a pretty organic process. I would remove material, fit it to the hand, and repeat the process. I also tried to get the joint to the shaft as close as possible on the sander. The final shaping would have to be done by hand. I used epoxy to secure the handle to the shaft. After mixing, I globbed it into the mortise and pushed the shaft into the handle. Then I cleaned up the excess with a rag and put it in clamps for the night. And that final shaping I mentioned earlier. In many ways, woodworking is just an exercise in sanding wood, but at least I can sit down for this one. I taped off the shaft and used a spray lacquer on the handle. This is the first coat going on and getting to see the figure pop. I stopped by the neighbor and had her test out the cane for height. Once it was cut to length, I used a spoke shave to narrow the shaft to the width of the foot. Then I used a rasp to create a tenon the foot will fit onto. The final sizing was done with a chisel. I then marked the final line I needed to shave down to and cleaned up the tool marks with some more sanding. The foot was epoxied on in the same way, but a screw was used to secure it instead of a clamp. I'm using boiled linseed oil for the shaft. I think it will wear better than a film finish once it's fully hardened. A film finish would show the scratches and dings a lot more. And now into the vanity shots. I hope you enjoyed the build, and I hope the cane is a blessing for the neighbor. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll read them and respond. Thanks for watching, and God bless.